Hello and welcome back. I'm Barbara O'Neill, and today we are diving into reversing type 2 diabetes. Research shows that diabetes affects nearly 38.4 million people in the United States, or 11.6% of the population. But did you know that it's possible to not only manage but actually reverse type 2 diabetes with the right lifestyle changes? So stay tuned as we explore practical steps and strategies to take control of your health, reduce your blood sugar levels, and work towards reversing type 2 diabetes.
Hippocrates, the father of medicine, 400 years BC, no mention of diabetes in his writings. So diabetes is a fairly modern disease. Diabetes is a lifestyle disease. Newton's third law of motion states that to every action there's an equal and an opposite reaction. Why isn't the pancreas working? That's what we should be asking. As Proverbs 26 verse 2 states, the curse causeless shall not come. There is a reason. There is a reason why pancreases are not working. Now the pancreas's, one of its main roles is to release two hormones. One is insulin, that gets the blood sugar down. The other hormone is glucagon, and that gets the blood sugar level up. Now the meal that you had tonight, because it's high in fibre, I think everything had fibre, generous proteins, there's your legumes and some great fats, it gives a slow, sure, steady release of glucose, of nutrients. And that allows the pancreas to just release the insulin as it's needed. That's what every cell in the body wants, and that's what our pancreas wants. But what's happening today is people predominantly are eating a high carbohydrate diet. And this high carbohydrate diet releases a lot of glucose. And that glucose, when it gets into the blood, especially the refined sugar, and by the way, the refined grains, it's almost as high as sugar. But there is one grain that gets the blood sugar levels higher than refined sugar. Is that a surprise? And the grain that does that is what? Bread and cereal and pasta and cakes, etc., and pizza are all made out of predominantly one grain. What's that one grain? It's wheat.
When we consume wheat, it quickly breaks down into glucose, causing a spike in blood sugar. This sudden rise requires a large amount of insulin from the pancreas. Over time, this constant demand can strain the pancreas, leading to insulin resistance and eventually diabetes.
You see, all of these foods break down in the gastrointestinal tract to a singular molecular structure called glucose. And glucose is then absorbed into the blood, and then it becomes part of the body because the blood is the life of the flesh. Now the blood takes that glucose on the M1 main highway, portal vein, straight to the project manager. That's the liver. Now the liver, as the project manager, is orchestrating what happens to everything that comes into the body. And so the liver, first of all, sends the glucose to the cell. So let's have a look at what happens inside the cell. So the glucose comes inside the cell under the action of insulin. Insulin's basically the key that unlocks the door to get the glucose inside the cell. And then it goes through a 20-step pathway. And that 20-step pathway gives us 2 units of energy. Isn't that why we eat? To get energy so our eyes see, so our ears hear, so our brain works, so our heart beats, so every single cell in the body is running because of the glucose. At the end result of this 20-step pathway is a chemical form of glucose called pyruvate. Pyruvate is the chemical form of glucose that gets fed into what's often called the powerhouse. Called the powerhouse because this 8-step pathway gives us a whopping 36 units of energy. Wow, what a difference. Now that pathway there is an oxygen pathway. It uses oxygen. This pathway uses no oxygen. What a difference oxygen makes. By the way, just a little sideline here. How are you going to feel if every single one of your 100 trillion cells has enough oxygen to get to that 8-step pathway? How are you going to feel? We're not going to be able to hold you down. How many people today do you know, when you say, how do you feel, say, oh, all right, not too bad. What's not too bad? Not too good. You know how it is, getting there. How many people, when you say, how are you, say, fantastic? You'd almost say, oh, what's wrong with them? Oxygen is a very powerful thing, it's oxygen. I have to hold myself back here because we're not talking about oxygen right now, we're talking about glucose. But the oxygen explains why so much more energy. So that's the first place that the liver will send the glucose is down the pathway to give us energy. So number one, that is where the glucose goes to the cell. But only so much glucose can be fed through the pathway. And so now the liver causes some to be stored in the muscle cell particularly, like a little bunch of grapes, but they're little molecules of glucose, and they're called glycogen. So glycogen is your quick release glucose store. So yesterday I had a light soup at about 4:30, I think. Then I worked hard yesterday evening, lecturing to you. I got to bed about 10, I think I was in bed by 10. Slept in a little bit. My habit is I wake at 5, but 5 here at the moment is... yes. 3 a.m, yes, so it was a bit hard to wake up here. So I usually walk at 6 and eat at 7. This morning I walked at 7 and ate a little bit later. And Amelia and I, we found hills where we were, and we did our high intensity running up the hills and recovery down the hills. Where did I get the energy? I hadn't had breakfast yet. I only ate lightly early yesterday. It's my glycogen stores. They're quick release glucose stores. They're just sitting in the muscle cell waiting to be called on. It's not a good time to exercise after you've eaten because where's all your body's energy going? Digestion. One lady said, well, how am I going to have the energy to walk? I said, it's your glycogen stores. It is the diabetic's best kept secret. All you need to do is something to access that, and 2 things access it. Demand, which is exercise, and the other is water. Very important to be well hydrated. It helps your body access that.
Staying well hydrated helps your body access glycogen stores more effectively, ensuring that glucose is efficiently transported to your cells. During exercise, your body uses glycogen in your muscles for quick energy, making hydration key for optimal performance and energy release. Many don't realize that energy levels are closely tied to hydration and glycogen availability. Regular exercise depletes glycogen, prompting your body to replenish it, which helps maintain energy levels and overall metabolic health.
Another contributing factor is dairy. And in the book, The China Study, Dr. Colin Campbell, he explains this one. When a human takes dairy, in the majority of cases, it's difficult to break down because we haven't got the 5 stomachs. And so molecules come into the blood that aren't properly broken down, and the body creates antigens to deal with them. Now, their molecular structure is very similar to the molecular structure of the beta cells in the pancreas. And so these pathogens, they're wiping out these molecules from the partially broken down milk, and then they look over at the pancreas and start to break down the beta cells in the pancreas. I hope I didn't lose you with that one. And so dairy is a big contributing factor. Colin Campbell states that children that have cow's milk in the first year of life have a 70% greater risk of developing type 1 diabetes. And yet, what would most children have for breakfast? Cereal, milk and sugar. That's what I had as a child, yeah? So that's another causative factor. Number 3 is drugs. Many drugs have as their side effect an effect on the beta cells in the pancreas to break them down. There is much research today, and I know a Dr. Glassons from America, he pioneered a lot of this research in about the 80s, that the polio vaccine was causing the type 1 diabetes. That's quite alarming, isn't it? Do you know the health department have put a statement out in the last few days that the only cases of polio around today are from the polio vaccine. Polio was wiped out before vaccines came in. Quite alarming, isn't it? The human body was designed to heal itself, and it'll heal itself if you give it the right conditions. And I had a lady ring me up with a 16-month-old child with diabetes, and she said it developed after her vaccinations.